This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Happy New Year's to you and yours as we are embarking on the year of 2024. Clearly, I'm sure everybody is reflecting on the year that we had for 2023. I'm sure that there's been some highs. I'm sure that there's probably been some lows, hopefully more highs and lows than anything else. But as always grateful to be able to sit down and pot along with my man 50 grand, www.shotsport. I can't even get it out right. I'm probably already drunk from it's not even
Hold on, you're pre-gaming for New Year's already, brother?
I'm pre-gaming already. I'm just giving everybody a taste. You know what I'm saying? So no, my man Warren Shaw repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. www.shawsports.net. Big Kahuna PNC. What's good, my man? Happy New Year's to you and yours, man. And as always, awesome to do it with you.
You know what it is, family. Yeah, Happy New Year to you as well, too, and to our fans and listeners. A little pre-recording here, but as we head into 2024, having a lot of fun here on the baseline, to kind of close out the year. We'll get back to the air quotes regularly scheduled program sometime in 2024 as well, too. But we're taking it light here, trying to have a little fun with everybody. Hope our fans and listeners are enjoying what we're doing here. And as always, man, we'll just get right into the show, family. But always great.
Listen, I'm sure everybody's enjoying, the background. You know what I'm saying? Like, light it up. You know what I mean? Like straight up and down, man. Light it up, like my man Drake be saying.
Hey, man, it's been festive to close the year, so we got to celebrate.
Speaking of festive, right? I'm sure we made this announcement last in our last episode, and we're gonna obviously continue to make this as an announcement. I think it's probably one of the highlights, not just for 2023 for us, but really for the time that we've been together doing our show. That we've been involved in the basketball NBA community. And that is, we were just recently notified that our podcast, our show, the Baseline NBA podcast, is among one of the finalists as the best basketball podcast through Sports Podcast Group. And it's basically through the Sports Podcast Awards Committee. And so, just so that people understand, man, this doesn't come easy, man. We are in some prime company, some really great shows that are out there, and to really be in the same breath with these shows to be considered, I think is awesome. So we just encourage everybody, if you have an opportunity, those who've been listening to us, those who are new on board, just catching us, whether it's through a friend or through what we've been doing through our media work and through the 19 Media family, please go to www.sportspodcastgroup.com. Go to the shortlist category, locate the 2024 awards, locate the basketball podcast awards category, and locate us, the Baseline NBA podcast. And we certainly would appreciate your vote. Obviously, we don't come into this thing, just taking participation points. We want to win. We want our family and all of our peoples, to show up and show out and show the love. So definitely go out there. We'd love to, and we'd appreciate your support and your vote. Anyway, as always, man, be sure to also support the show. Get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA, or get at me at GameFace Lee. The show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline, available on all the major platforms, whatever you use to listen to podcasts. And also recognize as well, too, if you see us, on YouTube, be sure to go to the Baseline NBA podcast. Check us out through the 19 Media Group channel as well, too. If you really do enjoy our content, you enjoy what we like to do, and you want to engage, man. I mean, we want you people to be able to give us some indications of what it is that you think from our thoughts, our commentary from our interviews. Hit that subscribe button. Give us a like. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we have got a catalog of shows, for your listening pleasure, but it's all about covering the game. It's all about covering the NBA. It's all about covering the culture and the community. So as always, we encourage you guys to head over to our channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Let us know that you're locked in with us as well, too. That's what allows us to continue to keep putting out that great content, man. And I know this has been a little bit extended, but it's the last episode of 2023, so to speak. You know what I'm saying, Shaw? We're heading into 2024, new vision, new grind, new hustle. But we again want to just let our listeners know we appreciate you. This doesn't happen without the support that you guys give, the commentary, the criticism, the good, the bad, the whatever. That's the driving force for us to continue to do that show, brother. And again, to be able to do it with you lets us know that the model of consistency, it can be done. It can be had, it can be there, and it can bear fruit. And we are living proof of that, as our people, Group Home would say. Shout out to Group Home. Rest in power, my man, Guru. You know what I'm saying? And the whole Gangstar Click family and stuff like that, man. They keep us uprooted, deep-rooted in doing this. So I had to make sure we give them a proper shout out on that.
Like anytime we know the baseline throws that hip hop vibe in there, it's always what it needs to be. That's where it's really how it all started anyway. But yeah, just echoing and doubling down on what you said, family. So again, if you rock with us, hey, continue to rock with us. We appreciate you. We're going to show you that love back in return as well too. So again, subscribe, vote, like, tell a friend, all that stuff, and we're gonna rock with you just the same thing as we have been doing for the last 10 years.
Absolutely. All right, so last show. So how do we wrap things up for 2023? What are we looking forward to 2024? New Year's resolutions, right? NBA style New Year's resolutions. My man Shaw and I are going to break down some of the things that we want to look forward to for 2024 as we are going through the current 23-24 NBA season. So clearly we are past the quarter waypoint. A lot of things have happened since the start of the season, since NBA tip-off till now, past the Christmas Day games. We have seen the conference standings almost turn on its head with unexpected teams that are clearly running ship, while the teams that we have expectations that are probably going to be there in the end are kind of just treading along slowly but surely, quietly on the upkeep. So we definitely have some New Year's resolutions that we want to kind of focus in on, maybe some teams, maybe some players, what our expectations are going into 2024 that we'd like to see that by the time NBA finals come, hopefully they will make our dreams and our aspirations come true, because we believe this is a byproduct of what will continue to be an exciting NBA season.
Yeah, I think very well said. So, we're just trying to, again, have a little fun here, but we're serious at the same time, because just the things that we think
I'm so sincere.
Some things need to change. Some things need to change. Or if teams or some players will take a hard look at themselves, we're being suggestive. You know what I mean? We're here to help. The baseline's lending a helping hand out here towards the end of the year.
Consultation. I think consultation is a budding career in this, especially in this industry. You know what I'm saying?
Life coaching and all of that. I mean, we gave all gifts last week, so you know what I mean? Now we're just trying to give some suggestions on some resolutions going in. The resolution roundtable, let's call it.
Well, that's all that I can give, because my budget's kind of thin with the gifts I was giving out, bro. You know what I'm saying?
I hear you. I do hear you.
You know what I'm saying? 2K players and meta quests and stuff like that. I mean, that's hurting the brother's wallet, man. You know what I'm saying?
You were very generous.
Very generous. All right, so let's get right into it, Shaw. Let's start doing a little bit of our New Year's resolutions. So I'll let you start it off. What is it that you want to see or you're looking forward to for 2024?
All right, so this is to our friends up north in Canada, Toronto to be specific. Now we've lauded Masai Ujiri for a very long time on our show, one of the better general managers, NBA executives, et cetera, for a very long time. Things are starting to slip a little bit there in Toronto. We're not really sure what the direction is. There's obviously Nick Nurse is gone and new coaches in place, but they lost Kyle Lowry for nothing. They lost Fred VanVleet for nothing. They're about to lose Pascal Siakam for potentially nothing if they don't make a move here. OG Anunoby is an unhappy individual, and they're just not really good. Now, the NBA playoff format allows, top 10 teams to at least fight for a playoff spot, or, 10, 9, 8, 7, or whatever. They're 12th right now at 12-19, 7 games under 500 as we record going into the new year. It doesn't look good. And I think they ultimately here, my New Year's resolution for the Toronto Raptors is pick a definitive direction. So you cannot continue to lose key players. I wouldn't say star players, but key players for absolutely nothing. So if you don't want to hold on Siakam, move him. There are teams out there with a lot of significant interest, and there's teams with significant interest in OG Anunoby. If not, then what are you really doing? Because this can't be it. Scotty Barnes seems like a real one. He's having a really, really great breakout season here in his third year. But to me, I'm concerned about what the Raptors are doing long-term with this roster. And I think we're at the point now, hey, are we going to try to get into the playoffs? Or and not just get in, like actually compete, because getting in at a 10 or whatever, getting to the play-in tournament and then maybe getting in as an 8 seed isn't really living. So if you're not really trying to do it to an acceptable level, then it might be time to strip off some of these parts. But a direction needs to be picked, and I think the Raptors have been teetering a little bit too long for me, especially in the last couple of years.
I want to ask you this question real quick, Shaw. When you look at this Toronto Raptors team, do you believe that they're better than the Brooklyn Nets? I'm not even going to mention any of the other teams that they have to contend with in that Atlantic division, because we clearly can see that they're not better equipped. They're not competitive to be able to hang with the likes of the Celtics, the Sixers. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't see that. Or maybe even the Knicks, I think, to some degree. But I'm just curious, do you think that they're better than the Brooklyn Nets?
I think they could be. I think they could be. I mean, everyone likes Bridges a whole lot. I think, comparing talent. So I always have to start from there. It's like, all right, well, who's Brooklyn's best player compared to Toronto's best player? And Toronto's best player is kind of in flux right now. Because would you say that's Siakam, or would you say that's Scotty Barnes, right? So even the fact that at least there's two of those guys there, that kind of says, hey, I like Toronto's talent better. But Brooklyn, to me, seems to have better, I don't want to say better coaching, but they have a more kind of, I don't know, a pseudo direction, if you want to call it that, right? They probably have too many wings, and they probably need to do something as well too. But I like Toronto's talent better than Brooklyn, but Brooklyn's playing slightly better basketball right now as we record this season. So, I mean, to me, Toronto has the most to gain if they were to try to go like more or less tank, because they can get the most for their parts, especially with Siakam and Anunoby. You're going to keep Barnes, obviously, but you can move a guy like Gary Trent and so forth and so forth. Brooklyn doesn't want to move Bridges. They're in that situation. That's who they want. That's who they're building around. Everybody else, I think, can probably go, in Brooklyn.
So, okay. So it's interesting how you answered that, because you started with where I said, okay, good. Now let me go ahead and jump in. And then you kept going. And I was just like, damn, now I gotta tweak this a little bit so that you can understand why I asked the question. It's pretty interesting, Shaw, because the Toronto Raptors have a lot of moving parts going on right now. And we are not really focused on it. We're not really speaking to it, because I think part of it is when you attach the level of success, we were so hardened in putting it all on the fact that this is the architect, this is the mind of Ujiri. You know what I'm saying? Like he built the mastermind plot, so to speak, to achieve what it conceivably is the unachievable, right? He is the first Black North American, right, in his position to be able to get a team in Canada to win a championship, from the major sporting events. Right. This is some significant stuff. Now, I'm not saying that he's resting on his laurels, but I clearly think you can see that there is a difference in philosophy about where the Toronto Raptors are. And I would have thought that by now, given the fact that you brought Kawhi Leonard, you couldn't keep him, no doubt. But you had Pascal, you had Van Fleet, right? You had Anunoby. Really, he wasn't really significant in the ability for them to win that chip. Right, that was more DeRozan and Kawhi Leonard. You know what I'm saying? Lowry and Kawhi Leonard. Than it really was about Anunoby's presence or his contributions and stuff like that, because he was constantly injured, right? And his play was in flux. Now we moved over to Pascal, right? Because Pascal kind of emerged from that dynamic duo, and we're not seeing next level Siakam. We've been waiting for it. We're not seeing it. Then they get Scotty Barnes. And we're like, okay, is Scotty Barnes the next guy up? You know what I'm saying? They keep Anunoby, which I would have thought, like, you probably would have moved on from him, because he actually gave you something that would have, his stock was much higher. So you can get something back from him in return. And I think they missed that window in doing that. They could possibly miss the window of moving Siakam when he's at a high, right, where there's a demand for him. But if these guys are going out and just playing marginal competitive basketball, their stock is not going to be worth anything as you start thinking about the trade deadline, unless you're going to give them up on the cheap. You know what I'm saying? There are teams that I can clearly say right now could definitely use a Pascal Siakam, but nothing from what Siakam has been showing us. And I'm not questioning his effort. I'm not questioning him as an individual. I just don't know where his mentality is with the organization and what he wants to give into what the organization is giving back to him. I don't think they're sold on him being the cornerstone player. So if you're getting quality games from Siakam, you should consider moving this guy on the high, right? Because if you're saying that Scotty Barnes is that dude, then you have to start preparing your roster on having Scotty Barnes, because it's clear neither one of them are giving you what you would think the Raptors should already have in that division that is going to be clearly competitive again for another 5 years. But they could be basically on the lower rung of that each and every single year, just simply because we don't know if Siakam is a cornerstone guy or a complementary piece. We don't know if Anunoby is a important role player guy. Definitely, we know he's not a complementary piece. He's too inconsistent. So there's not enough players left for Ujiri to kind of pull this thing together, so to speak, and rebuild the idea of what's going on with the Raptors.
Well, yeah, I think, again, so it goes back to the point, like, pick a direction. And Anunoby, for what I gather, I don't know him personally, don't have sources or anything like that too. I think Anunoby thinks, because it's interesting you bring up Brooklyn, I think Anunoby thinks he could be Bridges. He thinks he could go somewhere and do what Bridges is doing on a consistent basis, if he was given that level of latitude to kind of run an offense and still, contribute on the defense side of the basketball. But as you alluded to, he has a player option next year, $19 million. I don't think he's opting in. He's 26 years old, so he's in the prime of his career, right? So he's going to want to try to get in a significant payday. And as you're alluding to, if Masai doesn't believe like this is the team and these are the horses that he needs to keep, well, then you can't lose Lowry, Van Vliet, Siakam, and Anunoby, even Gary Trent, if you want to throw him in there for nothing. All those players, one way or another, are either up this year or have player options next year that they're probably not going to opt into. So to me, it's a no-brainer at this point. This is not a championship level basketball team. And while I'm sitting here, hey, choose a direction, I think the direction might have even, like, as we're talking about, the direction might already be chosen. Now you just got to kind of pull the trigger. Right. I don't know what we're waiting on.
Believing in the idea that this iteration of the Raptors is not going to work. And you have to believe in saying it's Scotty Barnes is that guy, because that's what's going to drive what you're going to do draft wise. That's what's going to drive what you're going to do as far as roster construction goes. You know what I mean? So yeah, I agree with you. It's interesting. I was checking ESPN.com and I went to the depth chart and I don't know if it's a typo or whatever, but they had Scotty Barnes listed as like point guard.
Well, he moved to the point guard, started because they're trying things now.
Yeah,
so he started at point guard the other night. Schroeder came off the bench, and like they moved Trent into the
that's another player. Given what Dennis Schroeder compiled for 2023, which is pretty damn impressive.
Yeah,
as annoying and as pestering as he is as a player, he has value. There are teams that need a quality backup guard. You know what I'm saying?
He was an emergency hire since they lost Van Vliet. So he was they had no other choice. So they threw $26 million at him roughly to say, hey, you come be our point guard. And then like to put a bow on it to some degree, I understand going into the season, new coach, hey, maybe this can be reinvigorating. Yeah, we lost Van Vliet, but Barnes is ready to step up. Schroeder's a capable, replacement, if you will. We got some nice rookies, or what the case would be. They signed Jalen McDaniels, Grady Dick, they draft. So maybe there's a little bit of optimism, like, hey, we're not supposed to be this bad. We're tall. We got a lot of size. We're physical dudes. Maybe we can make a run at this thing. But I think at this stage, 30 plus games into the season, you know who you are now. And I think now as January 15th rolls around and more players are going to be eligible to be moved, and then you're supposed to trade deadline from there, I think that's why I say now, as we head into 2024, all right, Masai, gonna need you to go ahead and log out with this iteration of that roster and reset it and see what's good.
Absolutely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Our conversation, New Year's resolutions. All right, so Raptors, we say choose a definitive direction. All right, Shaw. I'm going to give you my New Year's resolution. I don't find these super teams that have been formed over the last few years nearly as entertaining as we want to make them out to be. I want to kind of fall back a little bit to the attitude era of the NBA, where every superstar, every star player is basically like, I'm the man, I run ish. You want to win a chip, you got to come run with me. Like I'm just not buying into this buddy thing that's going on, man. It was nice when we were talking about, you know what I'm saying, De La Soul and, you know what I'm saying, the Flavor Unit and Jungle Brothers. It was all good, man. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's a day, oops and daisies, you know what I'm saying, and Woodstock and peace, love, and happiness, man. I'm all for that, but I ain't all for that with this iteration of what the NBA is doing with these super teams, man. And I'm going to say this not because I'm trying to diss. And I know a lot of people think that my focus is about what I'm seeing with the Phoenix Suns. I think that's the tipping point. I'm just saying that organizations, I think, are going way too hard in the idea of appeasing this premonition that by bringing a superstar's best friend, that equates to getting the most out of what they can do together, rather than realistically looking at the roster construction and saying, this is my man. I'm not giving him what I want, what he wants. I'm giving him what he needs, because I'm more qualified to call what is necessary to build this team around, because I still got a head coach that's got to work with these dudes. I still got other personnel and coaches that have to work, you know, collectively if the goal is to go win a championship. Because I think you have to be realistic, Shaw. I want you to think back over the last 10 years of the iteration of players that have said, you bring me my friend so that we can go win a chip, or you bring me the player I need so that we can go win a championship. And you let me know how many of those we can count, like off the top of our head, that we're able to go ahead and do that. Because even if you want to put LeBron James in that ilk, so to speak, right? Remember, he was there 4 years, only won 2 championships, and arguably they were the 3 best players in the NBA, with Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, and LeBron James. Now, that's not to say they didn't achieve what I'm talking about, but look how hard it was for them to get there, right? Look how hard it was for them to do it, because everyone said that they should have won 4 straight championships. You know what I'm saying? And then you look at the teams that beat them and how they were constructed. And I look at what these iterations are right now. Like, do you have confidence that the Phoenix Suns are going to go out there and win that chip? Do you have confidence that the Milwaukee Bucks are probably going to go out there and win that chip? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not seeing it. So I'm done with these. I'm done with the niceness of the super teams.
I mean, I think that's an interesting take, Cal, because I don't know that I'm going to call it buddy ball has really been as prevalent. There's been stars wanting to team up, but I wouldn't say like Kawhi and Paul George were like best friends. At least, like, you know, whatever, like they were in the same circles per se. But he's like, hey, I see a guy that I want to play with. I think his skill set matches mine. I want that to happen from Kawhi's standpoint. Durant has been a fan of Booker's game. I don't know if they're best friends per se, but there was like, hey, I want to go there. They get a chance to bring in real deal Beal. Fine, they do what they do. So it's not. And Dame and Giannis had no real relationship other than Giannis has liked his game from afar. But not, I wouldn't call it, you know, if you're looking at the root of what you said in terms of being friends, the last friends that were put together were probably that Heat iteration. And then when D'Angelo Russell got traded to Minnesota with Cat, those were best friends. And that turned out to be a terrible situation.
I get it. Well, but I'm going to push back a little bit. Remember, Durant did not want to, was basically bullying the Brooklyn Nets to send him to Phoenix. Right.
Well, his friend Kyrie. No, that's something you can utilize. He and Kyrie are friends or were friends.
Right. But I think in general, the context, Shaw, when I think about those guys that are coming together to play, right, there's an ease about them. There's not like a grit of determination that I'm seeing from what I think the era that we grew up in and saw. And again, I'm trying to get people from this idea of, oh, you know, these guys are doing this. It has nothing to do with that. I want you to look at the players that came out of the eras that we came out and saw. And they are certified superstars. They're certified stars. There wasn't enough out there for them to be speaking niceties about every single player and every single thing they're doing. And they weren't always complimentary of every conceivable thing. A lot of that is fodder because you're opening up the door to say, hey, when your contract comes up, if you want to come play for me, that's all well and good. You didn't have to say anything. What you put out there, your product is exactly where guys were aspiring themselves to either play next to that to win that chip or to be better than that. And I'm not seeing that ratio. I'm not seeing that balance of that from a lot of these guys. And we have a lot of these super teams, these quote unquote trifecta of superstars on one team. And I'm not seeing the results bear fruit to that idea. It could be mentality. It could be the way that they set things up. It could be the way that they walk into these executive offices and command, you know what I'm saying, what their perspective is on things. So I'm not just saying that it's just, on the surface of what you're looking at. I'm also saying the mentality is being carried with the way that it's being executed. I'm just not a fan of it anymore. If I have to be fine with 30 separate superstars playing on teams, and we've got some really great players that are on the come up that want to be the man, aspire. I want to see more competition from this level of elevation to do it. I'm all for that, because we're starting to see an imbalance now with where the top heavy is top heavy and the bottom is completely bottoming out. And we don't want that. We want parity in the league.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm having a hard time connecting it maybe in the way that I think that you want it to kind of come across, because I still feel like there's a certain level of parity, and then it's also like, how do you qualify superstar? Like, because what Boston did, like, is Porzingis and Drew Holiday, are they superstars? They're all stars, but are they superstars? Or they get added to a mix of Jalen and Brown, or Tatum and Brown, who are all NBA talents, right? So, like, it's a really, really strange, I think, kind of dichotomy. If you look at it, then you take a team like Miami, who are Jimmy and Bam are the all-stars. Tyler Hero is a borderline all-star, but then they don't bring in anybody, so they have a lot of homegrown talent, so to speak. So that's more organic in the way that you're speaking about. Then you have the situation with certain teams that are never going to be able to be a destination anyway. Indiana, Sacramento, et cetera, et cetera. I think De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis have become almost like best friends because of their play on the court, but they weren't friends going into that deal when Sabonis landed there. So there's so many different nuances, I think, to how roster construction is done and whether or not it ultimately works. And if you're like in a place like the Lakers, where LeBron is, not the GM, if you will, but he likes to have people who he's friendly with play on the team, then you see how the results can pair out there as well too. So it is a very, very nuanced conversation. I'd be very interested to hear what our fans and listeners have to say about it, when it comes to, the buddying up, if you will, and the pairing and even tripling up.
And this doesn't happen on all teams. This doesn't happen on all teams. You bring up a good point with the Boston Celtics. I think maybe it's the storyline of how you're constructing these teams or how these guys are coming together. And the one thing I can clearly say is that it almost makes it seem like nobody wants, any part of nobody, wanted, Drew Holiday, so to speak, badly enough, except for maybe like the Boston Celtics, who realize, hey, this needs to happen. And they sacrifice, because what he brings as an element is something that's clearly not exhibited in their star players. So it's in a way can help bolster it. But again, to me, that's what I'm talking about, where the executives are making the necessary decision on the roster that they think is best equipped to win the chip, not best equipped to get along and make everybody feel like, these guys can't win without, really being cool with each other. Because, to me, you look at how long has the Golden State Warriors, with the interesting personalities etched from Curry, Thompson, and Draymond Green. I'm sure to this day, they're never going to make you get the idea or the impression that first day, we're going to be great friends. And that grew with the level of competitiveness and who they were up against. And also with the fact that people didn't buy into what they were doing as players to achieve the unachievable, right? So I just feel like part of that, to me, is slowly withering away, slowly dying out. Part of it because, the core group being drafted and all that other kind of stuff. Again, great conversation maybe to be had further down the road. And I would definitely welcome people's perspective. Maybe I'm just being the old fogey curmudgeon in my ways of things like this. But
yeah, you got a little get off my lawn-ish going on, but I'm with you on it though.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Hey, listen, it comes with the gray hairs a little bit. You're tuned to the Baseline. Callie, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Coming up, more New Year's resolutions. My man Shaw's got a good one for you. I don't know. We want there to be good teams. All the teams need to be good. Stop giving us more bad teams. Bad teams making bad decisions. We're going to get into that and a whole lot more, so don't go away. But first, if you like using debit over credit, I just learned about something that's definitely a game changer. It's called Discover Cashback Debit. It's a checking account that rewards everyone with cash back on everyday purchases, which means you can get cash back on tickets for the game, snacks, team merch, all with no fees, making this season a total win. Check out eligibility and terms at discover.com/cashbackdebit. More Baseline. Cali, Warren Shaw. Don't go away. We're back, Cali, Warren Sharp, Baseline NBA podcast, and we're doing New Year's resolutions. All right, Shaw, what you got on your tab for New Year's resolutions?
So we interestingly enough, we're having some conversation about teams in general, and you know, I understand in a relationship it takes two to tango. It really does, but for some of these
I prefer the Macarena. But
goodbye. But
what you hang up on me for, man? That's not healthy in a relationship,
man. But for some of these bad teams, I think it's time to let some of these vets go, and actually maybe give a chance for some of your rookies and younger players to potentially shine. Now, again, I say this with the caveat that maybe not all these veterans want to go. Maybe they like kind of caking up, getting these kind of fat contracts and not having to really do a whole lot or play for a whole lot one way or another. But I'm going to identify, a couple teams and players where I think, it might be best times to part ways. We all know this one. It's an old record. I'm tired of saying it, but I'm gonna say it for one last time. Detroit Pistons let Bojan Bogdanović go. Just what are we doing? What
Keisha
what are
call
we doing?
him, man? Keisha call him.
and again, if you
cold world out there, bro, it's a cold world.
If he wants to be there, God bless him. You know what? God bless him. I don't have intimate knowledge of that situation, but it just seems to me, especially at this point, historically losing streak.
The knowledge is got money on my mind on my money. So
yeah, but he got his extension at this point, so he's set financially. He can really go help somebody elsewhere, and you can, start to get rid of.
Do you really think so, Shaw? Do you really think that Bogdanović can really help?
I do, and again, he's probably miscast in his role as a number 2 option, if you want to call it that, in Detroit, where he's probably at this stage even a better 6 man, especially for a good contending team. Like I think he could really help certain teams that need an offensive punch off the bench, and he's capable defensively, coming off injury, so maybe not as good as he has been in previous years. But I just think that's something that should happen there, especially to free up the logjam that they have in the front court. Now again, they would lack true veteran leadership within that locker room. But I mean, Alec Burks is still there. And I think, he can serve in that role better than a guy like Bogdanović can. And I'll just kind of run through some of the others. Charlotte Hornets and Gordon Hayward. Sure. if you want to hold on, sure. But if you're GH, I don't know why you wouldn't want to get out of that situation. Writing is on the wall. Bridges is back as well too. He seems like he's say what you want about him as an individual and as a person. His basketball talent and how it fits in that team seems to be what they ultimately want to move towards. And they drafted Brandon Miller. It just seems like a no-brainer to do something with Hayward as well. I think the Blazers, they probably will be able to do something here with Jerami Grant here at January 15th, but we know Grant likes to get his buckets. So of all the guys I mentioned, he probably wants to be there on this team that's not so great because he's getting the shine, especially with all the injuries they have. Brogdon is another guy there too that could potentially get moved on. And I think in Utah, Kelly Olynyk, his name has been mentioned in trade rumors. I think he's another guy too, as a big who's versatile, can shoot it, can pass it, can rebound a little bit here or there as well too. I think he's somebody who can help somebody as well too. Utah is not as bad as they started the season. They've gotten up to like 13 or 14 wins right now, so like 5 games under 500. But to me, KO is somebody who can go somewhere as well too. So let these vets go, man. I think they can have more fruitful times here in 2024.
Well, I mean, if they're going to help, again, bring in an added player and watchable eye, to those contending teams, I'm saying I'm all for that. I don't want these guys to get stacked on a roster where all they're doing is basically sitting on the bench as well too. And we've seen teams do that, because clearly, coaching philosophy styles and systems and things of that nature. They try to make it work and then it doesn't work.
Is there any one of these players that I mentioned? The only one that I would say maybe is in question is Hayward, and that's because of the injury history, like the health. But all these guys can still contribute at a level. Brogdon is the sixth man of the year, for God's sake. So we know that. Grant's putting up 20 points per game. So
So to your point, really of the guys that you've mentioned, the only ones that really intrigue me are Grant, Brogdon, and really Olynyk. Olynyk is an interesting kind of player because I really think that there's still just not enough depth in the front court position with some of these teams that are contending right now. I don't want to see him being moved for cap space because I really want to see if whether or not this iteration of Kelly Olynyk is the last iteration that we'll basically see. I listen, maybe I'm a homer and I favored him because he was a Boston Celtic, but I really thought that, especially being out there in Utah and, he had a really quality season, which, in Miami, I really thought that like there was like a place for him because, he was basically in the same conversations when we talk about Mason Plumlee, you know what I'm saying? And Zubac, right? Those guys kind of like had like these, there's like a small window where their careers kind of got resurrected from doing it. But the interesting players to me, or most interesting players, are Jerami Grant and Malcolm Brogdon, because I really think their skill set could be suitable for some teams that you can clearly tell are very much struggling. But to your point, they all have a mindset. Those two have a mindset of what they feel like they can contribute for the teams that they're playing for. They have an agenda. And to those contending teams, their agenda, I think, is counterintuitive to what they want to achieve and do.
I agree.
So it sucks, right? Like I can't knock a guy if he's making this decision because obviously it's his life, it's his bag, it's his future. But I also am someone who's like favoring the idea that I would love to see, a Jerami Grant playing on a team like, say, the Indiana Pacers, you know what I mean? Or, a team like the Orlando Magic, even if the intent is he's the guy that wants to go out there and get his buckets or whatever. I'm just saying that, like, when I look at what he could bring to the table for those teams, it's just, the thought process, like it is endless with those guys. So yeah, I agree with you. I want to see bad teams let these vets go. What I'm hoping for, though, is that wherever they go to can allow, a new storied romance to emerge, and not a sorry one that winds up, sitting on, Prime Video, Netflix. Like, you pick them up and they're only good for like four 4 episodes, and then it goes out to pasture. Like, you only pick them up so that it gives people a reason to subscribe to Netflix and watch this short-lived series.
Yeah, there's some boomer bust potential, especially I think in the Hayward example. But I think everybody else is capable, to do something in the right spot and in the right role. And I think, with Brogdon and Grant being the highest of those two guys, also quintessentially the highest two as paid players on this list as well too. That's why I don't think Grant's going anywhere. He got that bag this summer. Like, that's a hard contract to move for what his skill set is, and then the role that a team would probably need him to play as a third or even fourth option. That's just a lot of money to pay for that level of production. But everybody else, I think, can go and slide in sixth man, even seventh man, so to speak, in certain rotations, and be acceptable in a championship scenario.
Absolutely. All right, Shaw, I'm going to give you my final New Year's resolution.
Let's go.
Right. To the New York Knicks. And I'm begging, for our Knicks fans, Knicks listeners, listen, man, I know I'm close to the bridge. You don't need to throw me off the bridge on this, because you guys know that you've been thinking about it too. I'm just man enough to say it and just express it, because you just don't want to jinx a team that's actually winning, right?
True.
But it's interesting when we talk about this Knicks team. I always feel like the Knicks are the type of team that clearly live in the moment. And I don't know if whether or not they've ever understood what it feels like to live with a future ahead of you, right? Like, it's not like this is not sustainable. It's sustainable. You guys can continue to win. You guys can continue to compete in the Atlantic Division. But you have to start thinking realistically about what your roster is up against, and what you need to do to start building that team right now, right? If you're all in on Jalen Brunson, be all in on Jalen Brunson. If you're all in on Julius Randle, be all in on Julius Randle. But this half in, half out, this stuff ain't gonna cut it. And if you're gonna wait until free agency because you're the team that has to make that splash in free agency, like it's all about people coming to New York. Enough with that nonsense, man. Be realistic with how you're building this team right now, right? Be realistic with, do you see RJ Barrett as that cornerstone, as part of that cornerstone piece, that player that you're continuing to build around? He's been with the team for what now, 5 years, right? Clearly, he has struggled to find an identity in the system under Tibbs and really with the Knicks organization. And it's to no fault of his own. I mean, everyone can kind of bear the brunt of the blame on this, okay? But ultimately, when you see RJ Barrett out there, I'm still seeing a guy who clearly knew what kind of player he wanted to be when he came out of Duke, has no idea of what player he wants to be for the New York Knicks and really for the NBA, right? And I think that's something where you can start. Be realistic. Is this team going to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals? No, they're not constructed to beat the likes of the Boston Celtics. They're not structured to beat the likes of the Philadelphia 76ers. They're not structured, to beat the likes of the Milwaukee Bucks or maybe even the Indiana Pacers in a 7-game series. Be realistic with what this roster needs to look like if you want to compete with these teams and start building. You don't have to go and get the superstar player. If the player wants to come, that's different. I get that, right? And you want to roll out the Brinks truck, that's fine. But name me a time when that's ever worked out for the New York Knicks. They could easily be building teams like how the Indiana Pacers have their roster, like how the Orlando Magic has got their roster. And mind you, look how long we've been talking about these teams and their struggles for how long now, and look at what they're doing. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to be the top teams in the Eastern Conference, but you can clearly tell that the way that they're building their teams is sustainably more successful than what happens with the New York Knicks. There comes a point you have to really start being realistic about not just the roster that you have right now, this moment, but even over the next couple of years. And if you don't see that a player really fits in the grand scheme of what you're doing, and you can get him on the high to get some more adequate pieces to build a very competitive team that is going to have to hang with the likes of those top teams I've mentioned, you got to start doing it now. And it doesn't always have to happen by splashing money or because you're New York City that everybody wants to come and play for in order to achieve that goal.
I mean, New York's in a really unique situation. They have a lot of draft capital, which is not something that they've been able to say in years past. I'm sure you saw the Becky Hammond comment, if you will, about Jalen Brunson not necessarily being the guy or a guy or whatever the case may be. Don't know where you land on that. But then outside of that, it's RJ and Julius Randle. And yes, this is a team that is probably slated for somewhere in the middle of the pack of the Eastern Conference. Maybe they get a first round win again, but a second round team at best. And I understand that. And for a lot of New Yorkers, that's better than they have been in years past. So I think they're on the stage where they're trying to rise some semblance of competent general management in the front office and say, all right, we don't want to go out and do something crazy. I don't know that there is a move to be had for RJ or Julius Randle one way or the other. Right now, as you're alluding to, big splashy names, sure, Donovan Mitchell may want to come there. And if he does, then so be it. I guess you make the moves happen to try to fit that into the roster. Do you think Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson is a combination that puts you in the upper echelon conversation in the Eastern Conference? I think it's debatable, but what do they have to give up in essence to potentially do that, or any other player, right? The conversations about Joel Embiid, them sniffing around there. If you were to be unhappy, well, Embiid doesn't look too unhappy because Tyrese Maxey is a boss. So I think the aspects of trying to bring in somebody right now are slim. And this was the only part what I challenge it from your standpoint, because it's almost the same thing you're saying about the Knicks that I was saying about Toronto, but the situations are a little different. Randle and maybe to a lesser degree, Randle per se is not as desirable as a Siakam or Anunoby for certain teams, and that's probably not necessarily because of skills, but more or less because of attitude or the perceived attitude of Julius Randle. And then I don't know what the collective viewpoint of RJ Barrett is around the league at this point either. he was or was not dangled in the Donovan Mitchell conversation. Some people said when he was still in Utah, but what exactly would be the path for New York to make a move towards an upper echelon? Because they're not in the Toronto situation where they're trying to backslide. They don't want to go backwards in any capacity. It's only upward from what they're trying to do.
But I think part of that, Shaw, is the mentality of which the New York executives and the New York as an organization have to realign or reimagine its approach to what they want to do, what they want to negotiate. Let me just throw this out there. It's just a hypothetical, but I'm just saying even the realistic aspect of it should be considered. And when you think about the New York Knicks, I think often at times you don't associate it with it because they just keep doing the same old thing. Think about this. You got a disgruntled player maybe in RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett is a Canadian byproduct, right? Would RJ Barrett not want to probably pay for like the likes of the Toronto Raptors, right? And if the Raptors are disenamored with Pascal Siakam, and the Knicks may have a need to have, more of a presence, in the front court, whether it be offensive, maybe not so much defensive, but they'll probably be willing to give that part of it up, because of, the inconsistencies and the health reasons with Mitchell Robinson and things of that nature. I'm just saying, if you're the Knicks, don't be afraid to pull the trigger on something like that just because the Raptors are in your division. Who cares? I'm just saying that, I want to see the Knicks be a little bit more forward thinking, more innovative in their ability to build a roster, to build a team on the premise that they know that they're a good basketball team. They can be an above 500 basketball team. And right now it is, to your point, they know they're going to probably be hanging around in the middle of the Eastern Conference. But that doesn't mean that if they don't see an opportunity to go out there and improve this roster marketably, right, without having to break the bank, without having it to be something of a splash or being something of controversy, I think that that is a good thing because it's telling you the Knicks understand that this is not a 1 year, 2 year, or just whenever the confines of the free agency signing that they make of winning a chip, that this is an incremental process of getting themselves to that point where they can continue to do it. Because that's how I remember the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks in the 90s were not, we said the New York Knicks of the 90s, 91 to 93. No, it was the New York Knicks of the 90s from 91 almost to 2000. It was, almost like a dynasty of consistency and competitiveness in the Eastern Conference. There was to your point, they were definitive. Maybe they should be in our earlier conversation of the Raptors. Choose a direction. Be definitive about where you are, who you want to be, and be applicable to that, not just for 1 or 2 years or whatever your free agency signing should be, but for the duration of this mantra that the Knicks should be. And I think that they will be better off. I think they'll be better suited in making better decisions about how they're constructing their rosters because they've been able to do it. Remember, they did it through 3 iterations of coaches, even through the 90s, 2 iterations of coaches through the 90s. And that doesn't happen. You know what I'm saying? They fly through their players. They fly through their coaches. They just fly through them. And they've never been able to figure it out because everything is a now thing for them.
Well, I'll say this. I think from New York standpoint, similar to what we're talking about with Toronto, is that they probably know what success looks like for them for this year. And if they were to fall flat or to flame out for some reason, in the first round of the playoffs, or they get embarrassed or whatever the case be, then significant changes might come. And that might even come at the expense of Thibs as well, too. Like, I think everything is on the table. I just don't know that there's a clear path for them, given the contracts that they have, the way the roster is currently constructed. I mean, they just re-signed RJ Barrett as well, too, right? Brunson is in the second year of his deal. Randall, and he's got 2 more years left on his deal. And Randall, as I said, is not desirable by a lot of people's accounts, if you will. So the pathway to that construction or to be better isn't really as apparent, other than getting rid of Evan Fournier if they can find somebody to do that, or they just got to wait this year out where his contract, they have the team option where they just want to take it on. So to me, it's a little different. And because they're in a better space than say Toronto is, because they seem to be at least a playoff team right now with as currently constructed, they're willing to ride this out probably at least through the rest of this year, and then say, all right, what's the next step for us to get better before they were to do that right now. So if you're talking about in 2024, well, technically the season will end in 2024, and that could happen this summer, but I don't know if it's going to happen come January once we get there.
Absolutely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie, Warren Shaw discussing The hot button topics of the NBA are conversation of New Year's resolutions. Hey guys, are you looking for the ultimate destination for NBA gear? Then look no further than with the NBA store. Huge selection of authentic and high quality products, including jerseys, hats, and accessories. The NBA store has everything you need to show off your team pride. Plus, with exclusive and limited edition items, you can make your collection truly one of a kind. And with an online presence, you can shop from anywhere in the world. Don't miss out on the latest trends and experiences. Visit the NBA store today by clicking our affiliate link. If you're listening to us on your favorite audio platform, be sure to check the link in the description of the show. The Baseline is working in affiliation with the NBA store /Fanatics and will be compensated for your patronage by utilizing our link. And as always, we thank you for your support. Coming up, final thoughts, man, and as we embark into the 2024 year. You don't want to miss out here. Cal Lee Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA Podcast. We are back. Cal Lee Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA Podcast. And Shaw, awesome show, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? We can't even do this with a straight face, right? Like,
it's the beauty of the beauty of podcasting. It's
I tell you, NBA, you know what I'm saying, never fails. Never ceases. They never fail us.
But listen, as we get into this, right? We were both right. Let's put it that way. So as you listen to the show, and you
be listening,
yeah, and if you got into this part of the show, you'll see why. Hey, we were both right, because 2024 is going to start in a very, very vastly different manner for two teams we spent about 30 minutes talking about.
If there's ever a time that we want people to go out and properly vote on the side of basketball righteousness, it is your due diligence, our listeners, to make sure that you properly go out and vote for us to be the best basketball podcast.
I mean, hey, what are the chances? Obviously, they're very good. So, without bearing the lead too much further here, as we were recording or closing up our recording, the Toronto Raptors and the New York Knicks, two aforementioned teams on our show, have made a trade. Cal correctly predicted, kind of offhandedly,
theory. It was on the shelf, but I have a feeling I have to bring it back now.
Correctly predicted RJ Barrett to the Toronto Raptors. So the full deal is OG Anunoby, who we spoke about, Precious Achiuwa and Malachi Flynn to the New York Knicks for RJ Barrett, Immanuel Quickley.
I think the Knicks.
Let me finish the deal.
Wait, I gotta say this. I don't want to lose the thought. I think the Knicks got Malachi Flynn because he has a really dope name, and if we want to start.
You make me lose my thought. So OG Anunoby, Precious Achiuwa, Malachi Flynn to the Knicks for RJ Barrett, Immanuel Quickley, and a second-round pick, according to Shams and Woj. It's a developing story, so by the time we finish this recording, more players, more picks might be involved. We don't know. But let's give our quick analysis here, too, as, again, the two teams we spent a lot of time talking about on the show actually make moves here right before the new year. So the premonition of the New Year's resolution was permeating within the NBA ethos, if you will, Guy. Wow, amazing deal.
Just a little bit. Well, okay, so shout out to Malachi Flynn, man. No relation to Malachi the Nutcracker, but again, see how it all comes together. Okay, all right. Look, so let me ask you this question, Shaw. By this move, does that help answer what your New Year's resolution was earlier in the show about
for the Raptors
being more definitive, or letting us know what direction you're really trying to go in?
Not really. I think more moves are to come. So I think the Siakam piece is the biggest of the pieces that we discussed and what was going to happen there, right? But you get Quickley. He's a combo guard, but I guess he will probably slide in as that starting point guard now, potentially. Moving Barnes back to, more natural 3 position. Barrett comes in now to be the 2. So you have, pretty good size at the wings still, even though Barrett is not the defensive player that Anunoby was. But now you got to figure out what you're going to do with Siakam, I think, at some point too, alongside, Jakob Poeltl at the center position. Toronto, I don't think they're done, but they do clear the deck a little bit here. They get a disgruntled guy, Anunoby, off their roster, and they get a native in terms of RJ Barrett to maybe bring some nationalism and heroicism to the Air Canada Center, if you will, in Toronto. I think it's an interesting move from their standpoint, but a departure a little bit from the defensive principles that they were previously built on with Nick Nurse, as Quickley and Barrett are not defensive guys. They're not bad, though. They're not bad defensively.
Yeah, I think RJ Barrett going to Toronto, I think, is good for RJ Barrett. I just think his time with the Knicks, I think, is done. It's not even so much about him not living up to the expectations. I just think that the New York Knicks is not in a position to really cultivate the type of player I think we were hoping he was going to be when he came out of Duke. And I think maybe him going to Toronto may give him that opportunity to do it. It's on him, right? You don't have too many guys, going back to hometown, getting that hometown cooking and having an opportunity to rebuild and reconstruct the greatness of what the Raptors were able to do, just not too long ago. So Ujiri, I think there's more in his bag, so to speak. To me, the interesting question is everything that I just said about the New York Knicks. On the surface, I said, okay, good. Like, I like seeing this from the Knicks. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't necessarily have to be splashy. If it's that they're going to need more bodies because they need to create more depth for their basketball team, given the injuries and what they're not getting from certain players or certain roles, great. And they're not breaking themselves. They're not giving up a ton of capital for them to be able to do that. And I still think it preserves the level of success that the Knicks are still expected to have for this season. I'm good on that. I don't know if necessarily the players they're getting back are the type of players that I was expecting for the Knicks to be able to make those type of moves. We'll see if whether or not Anunoby can handle being a New York Knick. We'll see if he can, because to me, I feel like you already have that with a Josh Hart type. We were just talking about this before the news broke on it. But if you're telling me that Anunoby is going to be able to contribute in the Thibodeau offense, then to me, Rose and company is all in on what Tibbs needs for the Tibbs system to work, to properly work, for them to be the Knicks that I think that they're wanting them to be for this year. But I still don't think that the Knicks are done by any stretch of the imagination. But I like the fact that whatever move that they made is not something that's so glaringly egregious that it could completely fall flat on their face. All of these are gimme pieces. And if they give them up, ain't nobody going to not, remember them or whatever the case may be. It's not like it's hurting the Knicks and what they're trying to build for the future.
Yeah, I think from the Knicks, 16th in defensive rating, Tibbs wants to be easily, always wants to be number one, but at least wants to get into the top 10. Anunoby gives him that perimeter defender. He's a little bit more, rugged than RJ Barrett was, but I think Barrett tried defensively under Tibbs' system, so to speak. Anunoby still gives him 15 points per game, shoots 37% from the three this year as well too. So not bad. Again, it's an interesting move. I think it's more from the standpoint of Toronto getting a disgruntled guy off their roster and then bringing somebody who's from the area onto their roster. And the Knicks don't have to necessarily sacrifice a lot. I think the Knicks might be marginally better after this trade. I think the Raptors are going to be better simply from the addition by subtraction type of thing in terms of locker room. The malcontent that was probably Anunoby in that space. So it's a win-win in terms of those things, but I don't think it skyrockets the Knicks into contention into the Eastern Conference now as a result of this deal.
But what it does is, based off of what I was saying earlier before, the move opens up the Knicks more so in what the stigma was for them previously, meaning, hey, we're willing to deal with whomever if it's going to make our teams better, even if it's within our own division, which at times can be taboo. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that I'm not saying it's solidified as bulletproof, nothing like. I'm just saying that when I think about how the Knicks have operated in their business of doing deals and things of that nature, it is quote unquote bougie. There's a level of bouginess to it. And I like the fact that they're willing to kind of like really grind something that it may or may not work, but it won't necessarily hurt them. It's not going to, it's not going to make any big splashes through the headlines because, if you really think about it, it's more of a Northeastern type of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Well, no, listen, and here's, I'll even back up your point somewhat to some degree here too. So if they make it to the playoffs as we expect them to, right, Anunoby is a higher level defender than RJ Barrett was. Against some of the Eastern Conference elite, the Tatums, the Browns, even the Giannis's, the well, Anunoby can at least try to hold his own in that aspect. And you get off the $107 million that RJ Barrett was owed over the next, 4+ years. So Anunoby, if it doesn't work this year, well, you can try to flip him. You can maybe do a sign and trade, but he does have a player option, or you can keep him if you're so inclined. So it does free up a lot of stuff from New York standpoint fiscally, and it gives them basically a 1-year rental at a reasonably acceptable cost here. Do they have enough now offense with Quickley gone coming off that bench? That would be a conversation to kind of discuss. Or do you think Malachi Flinn can fit some of that role? Maybe he was a little bit miscast in Toronto, didn't get quite the opportunity. But I see why New York did this here a little bit more as we talk things out here. And again, like I said, I think it's a win-win where it doesn't catapult either team, but it was the right move for both teams.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad that the fireworks are still, you know what I'm saying, light, you know what I'm saying, lighten up, because clearly the NBA was thinking of us. we were in their thoughts.
At least this time, because, you know, for those in the podcasting world, you know, stuff like this can happen like hours after you've recorded or the day after, before you even got the show out. At least it happened while we were on air. And ironically, we can kind of close the show with, you know, kind of the conversation that we were talking about previously. And again, both of us end up being, you know, somewhat right in terms of moves needing to be done for both of these teams in Toronto and New York, both within the Atlantic Division.
Absolutely. So listen, as we were saying, you know, for this last part of the show was, you know, Shaw, what are you grateful for? I think we can safely say that we are always and forever going to be grateful for the NBA for doing what it do. But in all seriousness, man, we want to thank each and every single one of those who have been listening in. We want to thank all of our, you know, 19 Media Group family, our peoples from Gimmick Infringement. You know, again, congratulations on being nominated as one of the best wrestling podcasts that are out there. Again, we want to just make sure that, you know, for our listeners, and those who are now just tuning in as well too, you know, definitely, you know, head to www.sportspodcastgroup.com, go to the shortlist category, locate, you know, best basketball podcast for 2024. You'll see that the Baseline NBA podcast has been nominated as a finalist, and we would definitely appreciate, you know, a vote. So please head over there when you get the opportunity, click in, vote in, add us on. We're up against some really, you know, noteworthy competition and stuff like that. And that in itself is just, we're grateful for that, but we also want to win as well too. So definitely head over there, give us a vote. Make sure you head over and give our people's Gimmick Infringement a vote as well too. And again, man, we appreciate everybody for 2024. We want y'all to be safe, be happy, be healthy. There's a lot to look forward to for this upcoming year, and we want you guys a part of our ride. 2024 is going to be even better than 2023. And I know it. I can't possibly be able to achieve that, be able to believe in that without my man, Mr. Warren Sharp, my PNC, my ride or die brother, man. We've been doing this for a long time, man. And what a heck of a way for us to start 2024 and end 2023.
Yeah. Wow. Well said, man. Just got to wrap my head around it. Got to go fix my fantasy teams now. Thank you, Toronto. Thank you, New York. Thank you, everybody who tapped in to the Baseline for 2023. And we definitely will see you in 2024 for sure.
Absolutely. For the Baseline, Cali, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. Have a great, great, great new year. And we will catch up with you next time.